Three friends, David the leader, Marcus the cautious one, Kevin always joking. Vegas shimmered before them, a beacon of freedom. Age 19, just graduated. This trip, their victory lap. Excitement crackled like the static on the radio as they drove. Desert stretched forever, then bam! The city erupted, a riot of light and sound. First time for all of them. Promises whispered in the air. "Jackpot, baby!" Kevin yelled, already halfway out the sunroof. David grinned, feeling invincible. Even Marcus, ever the cynic, cracked a smile. Vegas had a way of doing that. This was their time. The Flamingo, a beacon of neon lights and endless possibilities in the heart of Las Vegas. Its history is as colourful as its exterior, a place where dreams are made and lost in the blink of an eye. Pink and gaudy, but iconic. Their room, surprisingly plush, with an air of old-school glamour that seemed almost out of place in the modern world. The decor screamed excess, yet it was undeniably comfortable. Kevin flopped onto the king-size bed, sinking into the soft mattress with a sigh of relief. The journey had been long and the bed felt like a cloud after hours of travel. "This is the life, fellas!" he exclaimed, his voice filled with excitement. The room buzzed with the energy of their arrival, a sense of adventure hanging in the air. They hit the casino floor, a whirlwind of flashing lights and ringing slots. The atmosphere was electric, filled with the sounds of coins clinking and people cheering. David felt a presence, something that made the hairs on the back of his neck stand up. A chill, like a draft in a sealed room, crept over him. It was an odd sensation, one that didn't quite fit with the warmth and noise of the casino. He turned, but saw nothing. Must be the AC, he thought, trying to shake off the uneasy feeling, but the sense of being watched lingered, gnawing at the edges of his mind. They started winning, small at first, then bigger. Drinks flowed, laughter came easily. Too easily. The wins felt almost too good to be true, as if luck was on their side in an unnatural way. Later, back in the room, David noticed it again. The feeling of unease, stronger this time, like an invisible weight pressing down on him. The feeling of being watched. It was unmistakable now, a presence that seemed to lurk just out of sight. He went to the window. The strip glittered, oblivious to his inner turmoil. The city was alive, pulsing with energy, but it felt distant, like a world apart from his current reality. Turning back, he saw it. A fleeting glimpse, but enough to send a jolt of fear through him. A shadow darting across the wall, gone in an instant, but leaving behind a sense of dread that clung to him like a second skin. "Dude, you're seeing things," Kevin said, tossing a poker chip in the air. The casino lights flickered, casting eerie shadows on the walls. Kevin's confidence was unshakable, but David felt a chill run down his spine. The room seemed to close in on him, the air growing colder with each passing second. They were on a roll, up thousands. The chips piled high and the laughter echoed through the casino. It felt like they couldn't lose, like luck was on their side. Drinks flowed, and the night seemed endless. But beneath the surface something was amiss. But the air had grown thick, heavy. The smoke hung low, and the once lively atmosphere turned oppressive. Conversations hushed, and uneasy glances were exchanged. It was as if the room itself was warning them. David couldn't shake the feeling of dread. His laughter felt forced. Every cheer and shout of victory seemed hollow. He glanced at Kevin, who was still riding the high of their wins, oblivious to the growing tension. That night the nightmares started. David tossed and turned, unable to escape the haunting images that plagued his mind. The darkness seemed to have a life of its own, wrapping around him like a suffocating blanket. Visions of a dark figure, eyes glowing red in the shadows. It watched him, waiting. The figure's presence was overwhelming, a constant reminder of the night's events. David felt trapped, unable to wake from the nightmare. He woke up gasping, drenched in sweat. His heart raced, and his mind struggled to separate dream from reality. The room was dark, but the fear was real. He could still feel the figure's eyes on him. Marcus was awake too, eyes wide with fear. They exchanged a look, both knowing they had seen the same thing. The terror was shared, and it bonded them in a way nothing else could. "I saw it too," he whispered. They tried to leave. Panic set in as they fumbled for the door, desperate to escape the room that now felt like a prison. But every exit, every hallway led back to their room. It was a maze, an endless loop that defied logic. The hotel's corridors twisted and turned, mocking their attempts to flee, as if the hotel itself was holding them captive. The walls seemed to close in and the air grew colder. They were trapped with no way out. The winds continued, but the joy was gone. Each victory felt hollow, a reminder of the price they were paying. The once thrilling game had turned into a nightmare. Each chip felt like a payment for something sinister. The weight of their winnings grew heavier and the sense of dread deepened. They had won, but at what cost? Panic set in. They were trapped, the air thick with malevolence. The room seemed to close in on them, shadows dancing on the walls, whispering secrets of doom. Every breath felt like a struggle. Every heartbeat echoed in the silence. The fear was palpable, almost tangible, as if the darkness itself was alive and feeding off their terror. The shadows grew bolder, whispering their names. Each whisper sent shivers down their spines, making their skin crawl. It was as if the shadows knew their deepest fears and were taunting them, playing with their minds. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, filling the room with an eerie cacophony. Kevin, his bravado gone, broke down. Tears streamed down his face as he realized the gravity of their situation. His hands trembled, and his voice cracked as he tried to speak. "We're doomed," he muttered, his eyes wide with fear. The weight of despair was crushing, and he felt utterly helpless. "We're never getting out of here." David knew they had to do something. He couldn't let the fear consume him. He had to think to find a way out. Desperation gave way to determination as he racked his brain for a solution. There had to be a way, some clue or hint that they had missed. He remembered the old stories, the legends, gambling with fate, tales of those who had faced similar situations and had found a way out through sheer will and cunning. The stories were old, almost forgotten, but they held a glimmer of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could use them to their advantage. He grabbed a handful of chips, his entire winnings. The weight of the chips in his hand felt like the weight of their fate. This was their last chance, their final bet. He had to make it count. Every decision, every move had led to this moment. "One last bet," he said, his voice raspy. The words hung in the air, heavy with meaning. This was it, the final gamble. The room seemed to hold its breath as he placed the chips on the table. The tension was unbearable, the stakes higher than ever. He placed it all on black, his heart pounding in his chest. The wheels spun. Time seemed to stop. Every eye was on the wheel, every breath held in anticipation. The sound of the spinning wheel filled the room, a constant reminder of the uncertainty of their fate. Then slowly the ball landed on red. The room fell silent. The crushing weight of defeat settled over them. It was over. The final bet had been lost. The realization hit them like a tidal wave, drowning them in despair. A cold hand gripped David's shoulder. He turned and screamed. The lights went out. The darkness swallowed them whole, leaving nothing but the echo of his scream. The final bet had been made, and they had lost. Gap 2S. The darkness was suffocating, an endless void that seemed to stretch on forever. Panic gripped their hearts as they stumbled through the blackness, the echoes of David's scream still ringing in their ears. But there was no time to dwell on their loss. The Mafia boss, enraged by their defiance, was hot on their trail. Footsteps echoed down the corridor, heavy and relentless. The air was thick with tension, every shadow a potential threat. Kevin and David exchanged a glance, a silent agreement passing between them. This was their last chance to escape, to outsmart the malevolent force that hunted them. They burst into their hotel room, slamming the door shut behind them. The room was a mess, a chaotic reflection of their frantic state of mind. Kevin's hands shook as he barricaded the door with whatever furniture he could find, his breath coming in ragged gasps. David, his mind racing, scanned the room for any means of escape. The Mafia boss's voice echoed through the hallway, a chilling promise of retribution. "You can't hide forever," he snarled, his footsteps growing louder. The sound sent shivers down their spines, a stark reminder of the danger they were in. David's eyes fell on the window, their only route to freedom. "Kevin, the window!" he hissed, urgency lacing his voice. Kevin nodded, understanding the gravity of the situation. Together, they pried the window open, the cool night air a stark contrast to the stifling tension inside the room. The mafia bosses pounding on the door grew more insistent, the wood creaking under the force. They had seconds, maybe less. Kevin climbed out first, his movements clumsy but desperate. David followed, his heart pounding in his chest. The fire escape was their lifeline, a narrow path to safety. As they descended, the door to their room finally gave way, the mafia boss's enraged face appearing in the doorway. He lunged towards the window, but they were already halfway down the escape. "You won't get away with this!" he shouted, his voice filled with venom. The city lights below were a blur as they reached the ground, their feet hitting the pavement with a jarring thud. They didn't stop to catch their breath, didn't look back. They ran, their bodies fueled by adrenaline and the sheer will to survive. The maze of alleyways and side streets became their sanctuary, a labyrinth that shielded them from their pursuer. The sounds of the city enveloped them, a cacophony that drowned out the echoes of their fear. They had outsmarted him, at least for now. As they finally slowed, lungs burning and legs aching, they knew this was just the beginning. The final bet had been lost, but they had won their lives. The price of luck was steep, but they had paid it and lived to tell the tale. Gap 2S. The night was far from over, but for the first time in what felt like an eternity, they allowed themselves a moment of hope. They had escaped the abyss, and as long as they had each other, they could face whatever